The Athletic, basically Mike Sando, who I think he covered for the 49ers for ESPN, I want to say like years back, like maybe 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Mike Sando was the guy, right? Okay, so I wasn't sure if I remember that correctly, but when I was a kid, I remember the ESPN guy was Mike Sando.
Pre-Twitter, yes, yep.
Yeah, so he basically does this thing. A lot of the articles he does now are basically just expert opinions on a specific thing that happened in the NFL. In the last few years with the draft, since he's joined the Athletic, he does this thing where he basically interviews anonymous executives and anonymous like GMs, player personnel people, all of that. And he basically just goes through and he asks them like their opinions on each individual draft. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the Niners draft, it got like most people were like, yeah, it's cool. Kyle Shanahan got Trey Lance. It was mostly positive. It was just one salty executive comment. And it stood out to me because I think that it does garner a little more conversation. But it was also funny to me that this executive was so salty. And basically what he said was, I quote, San Francisco is one of those teams that does a great job creating a narrative. And they get treated kindly, an exec said. Other teams with better records over the past 4 years get crushed. Look at some of their early picks. What makes you think Trey Lance is the right pick if you follow the record of their early picks? And Mike Sando answers this question before he moves on to the next paragraph, and he says Kyle Shanahan's presence is what?
His presence, his aura. It's orange, but it also has a purplish tint on the outside, which just makes it really nice. No, I think this is a really interesting macro look at the 49ers and their draft, because I think a lot of us get caught up in the Niners narrative, the reasons they do the things that they do, the reason they think it's going to work out, and the reasons why they think things haven't worked out in the past. And what he's saying is, hey, all I know is there's 31 other teams, and a lot of these other markets don't give other coaches and teams the same kind of benefit of the doubt. And I think that's true. Can you think of like another team that's maybe had comparable success to the 49ers the last 4 years, but not the same kind of benefit?
Yeah, I'm sad to say this, but yeah, I actually, my first thought was that the executive that's making this comment is Ryan Pace. And that's because Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy are in a fight for their jobs. And to be fair to the two of them, they have had 2 playoff seasons in the last 4 years. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have 3 losing seasons out of the last 4 years. They actually have 2 playoff seasons of the last 3. And they get crushed for the 2017 passing on Mahomes and Watson. But whatever you want to say about Mitchell Trubisky, he is a better football player than Solomon Thomas. So I think the trade-up is really what gets them. But they definitely get they get a more criticism than the San Francisco 49ers do. And there's a lot of reasons why, and I'm sure we're going to delve into them. But my original kind of takeaway was, wow, like these other GMs are like salty because like look at Ryan Pace, right? Like, the 2017 draft for him, right? He took Trubisky, but in the 5th round, he also got Eddie Jackson, who has the same number of first-team All-Pros as George Kittle, and he has the same number of Pro Bowl appearances as George Kittle. Eddie Jackson is not better than George Kittle. I just want to repeat that one more time because that's not what I'm saying. But most people, when they look at the Niners draft, they say, look, 2017, they got George Kittle. So, Reuben Foster, Solomon Thomas, all those things are okay. Well, they got Mitchell Trubisky and a bunch of and Adam Shaheen and players like that didn't work out, but they also got Eddie Jackson, right? So that's where I get it. I get where this GM is salty. I think there's a lot more to it, but I think there is something to the fact that, there are other people that are salty that, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are paraded like they're talked as highly as Les Snead and Sean McVay, who've had 3 winning seasons, or they've had 4 winning seasons in a row with 3 playoff appearances, right?
Mm-hmm. The Rams. So the way I look at it is like, why? I think there's a reason, and I think this all started when John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan came to the team. The Niners didn't get this kind of benefit of the doubt when Trent Baalke was here.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. And the way I look at it is John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan came into this organization with national reputations already intact. Kyle was the genius. John Lynch was the Hall of Fame player and the established announcer. These guys have a lot of allies and advocates in the national media all over the country. And this market over here, although the Bay Area is very big, it's the media market, as I think, as the whole world can see, it's not exactly Philadelphia or New York or apparently even Chicago. It can be a little bit, I don't want to say soft, but soft. And I think that's why maybe people out here feel like, well, who are we to really say that Kyle Shanahan isn't good? I mean, you'd have 5 guys who were way more established national writers saying I'm wrong. I mean, you'd have to catch a lot of flack for that. So I don't want it. Whereas maybe a place like Chicago is like, hey, Matt Nagy, I don't know who you are, but we're ESPN Chicago. We can say what we want to say.
So
you know what I mean?
So there's 2 ways I actually look at it. I think the point that you made about Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, the reputations they came in with is really important. I mean, John Lynch, first of all, he was a former Fox employee, so 50% of the national media is not going to say anything bad about him because that's their former colleague. So Fox is not going to say anything ever bad about the 49ers. Then there's a lot of former teammates of John Lynch within the media. So that's like 20% of the media that's not going to say anything bad about him. And then the third part of it is that he's possibly the greatest guy in the entire world. I mean, the guy is literally perfect. He's well-spoken. He always says the right things. He's very honest. He's interesting. He's smart. He's everything you want. So like, then how do you say it? How can you be the guy that says a bad thing about John Lynch? So like from that standpoint, I get it. But I think the other aspect of it too is that I think people look at Kyle and like you see the coaching talent, right? Like it goes beyond just the results, right? The results are what they are. And for Kyle, the results don't reflect the talent he's shown, right? In 2017 with that terrible roster, they were competing in every game. And like if you look back at 2017, knowing what we know now, I think the way we view Jimmy would be totally different. We view Jimmy as the guy that came and saved the 49ers. I actually think the view that should have been on Jimmy was CJ Beathard and Brian Hoyer were the reason they weren't winning like 7-8 games in 2017 itself.
They found ways to lose games they should have won.
Yeah, the team was so well coached they had, I would say they had if you look at their 2017 defense, it wasn't just their offense, their defense also. I would say the 2 standout players of that defense in 2017-3 were Buckner, Reuben Foster, and Jaquiski Tartt. Those were the 3 players that I looked at and said they were a cut above. They were legitimate on that defense.
Foster played like 10 games that year, didn't he?
Yeah, he played the last 10, and he was awesome. He had like 75 tackles. PFF was saying he's like the 3rd best linebacker in the NFL, all of that. Buckner was always good, and Tartt played like a top 4, 5 safety in the NFL that year. People don't remember, but he was absolutely unbelievable. Everybody else on that defense wasn't great, but they were getting stops when they needed to. And same thing with their offense. Their offensive line was terrible. Goodwin was playing unbelievable, but he was really their only weapon. Kittle was banged up throughout that season, and he still wasn't George Kittle yet. And the run game had Carlos Hyde and all that, and they were competing in every game. And so, like, looking back, it was like we thought Garoppolo was the savior, but they were so well coached. And I think that's what it is, Grant, before you interrupt me. It's just that the coaching is so good that people look at that little potential and see what he can do. And with Matt Nagy, you look at the coaching and say he's not getting the most out of these players, and that's why the Niners get more of a favorable shake.
Yes, absolutely. I just think it's really interesting when you go back. If you have some time, go Google the draft grades of the Niners 2017 draft immediately after it happened. That was one of the highest graded drafts I can remember. I mean, everyone said the Niners won. They got their guys, 2 first-round picks, the best draft, 2017. Yeah. So there's probably something to this. For whatever reason, a lot of people are into the Niners narrative viewpoint, and I think it's John Lynch's charisma. It's Kyle Shanahan's pedigree. There's a lot to be persuaded by, even though when you say it's a production business, it's a win-loss business. You are what your record says you are. Well, not in the Niners case, because in the Niners case, they had injuries.
Remember how happy we were that Reuben Foster was talking to the Saints, and then he said, sorry, coach, the 49ers are calling me. I don't think you're drafting me and all of that. And, the Saints, the poor Saints, they only got an all-pro tackle in Ryan Ramczyk at 32 instead of Reuben Foster, the poor Saints. But I think there is something I think that the expectation is right because we follow the 49ers closely. We can give all the reasons and give you all the reasons as to why all these things happen, why they're viewed the way they are, why it's unfair to say these things. But if you just look at it from an outsider's perspective, you can see why so-and-so executive who's getting killed in the media daily, I'm guessing it's Ryan Pace. It's probably not Ryan Pace. I'm just saying him as an example is a little salty.